Okay, give everybody just a few minutes to enter the room here. As they are entering the room, I just want to thank again our keynote sponsor, Pro Solutions Training. I know yesterday at lunch you had the opportunity to learn more about their new home visitation course track. Encourage you to look at that. But again, thank you, Pro Solutions. Also, we want to be able to share just a couple other more announcements, and that would be our winners of Angela's book. So each day we have been giving away 20 of your books, and we're just really, really thankful. Our various sponsors that stepped forward, we were able to use that to give back for our attendees that have enjoyed the last 2 days. So if you've seen your name there, please email, confirm, conference team will email you to confirm your shipping address. So we will let you know that.
Look for that tomorrow. So
yes, give us a little chance to recuperate, and we will follow up on all of those things. But we are extremely excited for our closing keynote speaker, Angela Quijada-Banks, and I hope I did okay with that. Welcome. She presents herself as provides holistic purpose coach and part of the NAACP Image Award nominated. She's an American author of the best-selling book, The BLACK FOSTER YOUTH HANDBOok, founder of Soulful Liberation, which started as a podcast to support young people with trauma navigate their healing journey during the pandemic, and has expanded into a movement where she aims to empower others to channel their hurt through art, storytelling, and book publishing. As a transformational speaker and artist, she has impacted thousands with her message to alchemize your pain to purpose and power. Angela is a scholar at Legacy Holistic Health Institute, studying holistic health and healing through medicinal herbs. Through her everyday work with helping young people uncover their divine purpose, performing spoken word events, facilitating workshops, and political advisory to legislators across the nation, she aims to aid in a revolutionary change in the areas of holistic health, economic injustices, child welfare disparities, cultural awareness, and identity within low-wealth communities of color, both on a micro and macro level. We are so pleased to welcome you, Angela. Thank you for joining us, and I will now turn things over to you.
Thank you so much. And yes, you did great with my name. I'm really excited to be here with you all and to share something that, I'm honestly still processing as someone that has experienced the foster care system. And, my intention really here is to enlighten what you already have in your own life experiences, professional experiences, and really kind of bridging the gap between a lot of the issues and the solutions. So welcome to Save the Family, the Unspoken Effects of Family Separation. My name is Ángela Quijada-Banks, and let's get into it. So before we really get into you learning some intimate details about me, my story, kind of, I guess, how I got here too, I'd kind of love to know how you got here. If you could share in the chat your name, your current profession, and really what brought you to child welfare. What is the reason that you decided to get involved with the child welfare system? I realize and recognize as I've gone across different states and countries that, people don't just go on a summer day trip and say, okay, this was cool. I want to come to go and become a social worker. I want to go and be a child welfare professional just for the fun of it because it's exciting, or, those types of reasons. It's usually more centered on purpose and, some type of connection, whether, family members or friends, or just wanting to give back in some way. So I'll read some of these responses here. Yes, okay. We have Allie Neal, prevention specialist, called by God. Yes. Catherine Comer, RN. Ashley DePasso, social worker, a youth in my family who suffered in the child welfare system. Hadia Johnson, school social worker. Tiffany Davis, social service specialist, wanted to help kids. Let's see, Helene Harris, social worker, love working with children. Tori Young, clinical therapist, outreach specialist, trauma from parents' divorce. Wow. Catherine Preston, a survivor of domestic, okay. Yes, and these are some of the things that I've recognized, is that there's some deep-hearted sense of, why would you want to be in a profession like this, right? It's not something just for the kicks of it or just for the fun. Nicola, school social worker, desire to be a change agent. Yes. Mariah Clark, foster care case manager, gifted to be able to talk with children and wanted to help build them from where they are. Wow, that is beautiful. Christina Garrett, social worker, DFCS, lead field program specialist, Region 5, Athens area, really wanted to help children and families. It is very purposeful. Shout out to all the folks here that are doing things with a purpose. And I hope, you are tuned in with limited distractions, because you're going to get a lot out of this. So what will we cover here today? We will be, 1, learning about some of the effects of family separation. 2, 3 practical steps you can take to prioritize family well-being in your practice, in your life, in your day-to-day experiences, right? Because it's one thing to just learn about all the different things and hear a story and then move on and be like, okay, well, that was cool, right? And that's not really the main reason, I hope, that you came here, or for this entire conference, was to take some really important information and golden nuggets and see how you can practically apply this day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, and continue to support the shift in the child welfare system and to better support our youth and families. And lastly, making a decision on how you will move forward after today, right? So we're going to take a deep breath and begin here. So before I was in foster care, I felt depressed and I wanted to be far away from my parents. I rarely felt safe, and due to the chronic abuse and neglect that I was experiencing, I soon couldn't see past my past dreams of my childhood dreams of being a forensic psychologist, of doing so many amazing things and going to college, specifically Duke University. And, I had so many hopes and dreams, but then because of all of this stress and trauma and day-to-day things that you will learn about soon, it was just so exhausting that I couldn't even see that for myself anymore. I couldn't see that I would even get to high school, that I would graduate high school, that I would get to college. And that vision for myself started to wane. I didn't think I'd make it. Simultaneously, I was connected to my biological family with a little sliver of hope, right? I was connected with my grandparents, who I desperately wanted to live with. I was connected with my aunt, I was connected with my uncle, my cousins, and very importantly, I was connected with my siblings. And clearly, as I shared, my family was not perfect before foster care, but was permanent separation the answer to my family's disconnection and malfunction? So I want you to take a moment here, and maybe you can close your eyes or limit your distractions, and I want you to take a journey with me. All right, so imagine you are a 15-year-old girl with 5 siblings who are experiencing physical abuse daily and being left at home chronically for days at a time by your biological parents. Your entire family is living in a 1-bedroom hotel with only microwave white rice and bologna for many of your meals. You sleep under an air conditioner to keep from being a punching bag between one or both of your parents. Each day, you feel yourself slipping into a deeper depression and having suicidal thoughts. To make matters worse, your mother has decided to leave with your youngest brother during the middle of the night for another family that she has been comparing you and your siblings to for a few months now. Your dad has just decided that you will need to drop out of school and start helping keep the family afloat with a couple of jobs full-time since the matriarch has left. You decide to leave to a friend's house and ask if you can stay with them for a while to escape the chaos. In 2 months, your mom returns and threatens that she will call the police if you do not return. You decide to come back, and the physical abuse escalates. You feel about 1% hope that you will live to see 17 years old as you watch your siblings' mental health decay as yours did. You start high school, 10th grade, as the new kid again for the 20th time and become mute. Due to you periodically bursting into tears during class, your Spanish teacher refers you to the counselor's office. At the counselor's office, you hear nothing but muffled sounds coming from her lips until she refers you to the school social worker, who begins to give you confidence in her ability to create some sort of change in this endless, hellish loop. After hearing only 50% of the exact nature of your situation, she gives you an ultimatum about your future. You have 2 choices. And at this time, I want you to put your answers in the chat. Choice 1, stay and stick it out with known hells and hope it gets better. Meaning, continue to sleep under the air conditioner, eat the microwaved white rice for 2 out of 3 meals a day, or nothing. Have a lot of the physical and mental abuse continue, yada, 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 and hope it gets better. Choice 2, go into foster care and unknown hells and hope it gets better. So let's see what you guys are saying here. Choice 1, choice 2, choice 1. Okay, we got a lot of 1s and 2s. Okay, someone said, can I run away? I tried that one, remember? And my mom threatened she was going to call the police, so came back. Go to foster care and hope it gets better too. This is difficult, neither. Yes. Well, if you haven't figured it out yet, I was a 15-year-old girl and I was given those 2 choices, and I chose to go into foster care. I was placed into foster care at 16. I was placed in a kinship care with my siblings, actually, and when that did not work out, no other family like my grandmother or my close aunt, which I frequently talked about and shared that I wanted to live with, they weren't considered because they were in another state and they thought it was going to be very expensive, and there was always all these excuses, honestly. So instead, my siblings and I were separated by gender and barely given the opportunity to connect with one another. And we were not allowed to connect with any of our biological family whatsoever. So during foster care, no contact was allowed with my biological parents, although off the record, we definitely try to sneak it in every now and then. Because although we had experienced all this, trauma, we still loved them, we still wanted to be with them. And we just hoped that they would get better. 2, contact limited with siblings used as punishment or reward for behavior in response to being in foster care and separated from biological family. So we weren't allowed, my siblings and I weren't allowed to communicate each other unless it was on a supervised line. And oftentimes, from my siblings mainly, they were not allowed to call me or answer my calls if they didn't finish their homework, if they didn't have certain grades in school. So it was very much a punishment or a reward based on their behavior, which of course their behavior, depending on what that was, lack of focus, in school or whatever the things were because of the trauma that we were experiencing as a family in foster care, right? And also promising the trauma. Also, literally going through trying to figure out what is even happening, what is even foster care, what is even going on, what happened before foster care, how did we get here? So all these different things that we're trying to process and understand and learn, and it's kind of like in addition to that, another layer of trauma of not even being able to contact our siblings. And honestly, our sibling relationship at that time was so strong and connected, and that was a lot of the reason why we got through a lot of our situations, was because of our bond of being so close. And a lot of the social workers during this time, interestingly enough, that we had, were very shocked about how close we were, because I was 16 years old, and then it was like 4 years younger was the next sibling, and then 1 year below that, so 5 years, 6 years, and so we had quite a bit of a gap in our age range, but we were very, very close. And so they kept on saying things like, oh, it's not going to be like that forever, because you get older and things happen. And it seemed, although that they said these things, that we still were trying to keep it together, but it really was them, the different people that were in our foster care placement and managing our case, that kind of created this situation where we weren't able to connect as often as we wanted to. Another thing, my sister was heavily medicated, and when she showed significant emotions, she was penalized by being thrown in behavioral facilities with limited contact. So for me, emotionally, I was not okay, because the effect on this from all of my siblings and my entire family is like, okay, we're now in this space that's supposed to be, better than our situation, but now my sister is heavily medicated because she's not happy, like we just got separated from my brothers, we got separated from my parents, we can't contact anyone, there's all these strangers, there's all these different moving pieces, and still expected to perform a certain way. And I use the word perform strategically, and act a certain way as if things are perfectly fine. We should just be grateful, right? Just be grateful, should be happy. And so this really weighed heavily on me. And at this particular time, I was in college when my sister started becoming heavily medicated. And, there was virtually no way that I could communicate with her. And she had all these different stipulations on what hours she was able to talk. And it felt like she was in prison. Another thing was being moved from place to place, right? So continuously not, I guess, being in a space where caregivers could see through the trauma that I was experiencing. A lot of things that I happened to do to be moved from place to place was self-isolate. So I would self-isolate a lot because I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want there to be an issue or a problem. So I tried to keep myself, away from everybody and everything, and have minimal contact. But people took it as so many different things. So ended up not working out for me with that. So those are some of the things that I experienced during care. And also that a lot of youth and families experience going through the child welfare system. So the University of California says children who have been in the US foster care system are at a significantly higher risk of mental and physical health problems, ranging from learning disabilities, developmental delays, and depression to behavioral issues, asthma, and obesity than children who haven't been in foster care. And when I did get out of foster care and started in my advocacy and activism journey, I learned a lot about what really starts and continues these different situations with youth, and also in my own situation with my siblings. So on the surface level, right, looking back at my story and the story that you were a part of 15 years old, going through all these different things, and finally being placed into foster care at 16, some of the causes listed of this placement were the abuse and neglect, right? And so under abuse, it was extreme and it was consistent. And the neglect, it was high mobility, just always moving. I had moved over 20 times at the time of 10th grade. So sophomore year in high school, I became mute due to all the trauma and just always moving and wanting to connect with people and not being able to, and having to go through the motions of building these relationships, these beautiful relationships, and randomly leaving or having to, stop them. Neglect, not financially stable. I shared, we were eating white rice and bologna in a 1-bedroom hotel. Oftentimes me and my siblings, we slept on the floor. So that was another aspect. Basic needs, food, shelter, clothing. And even the reason why basic needs is in quotations is because I really want us to really think about what it really means to have basic needs, and a lot of people, and it was drilled into me when I was in foster care that I had my basic needs met. So again, I should be grateful and I should be happy, which was my food, shelter, clothing, probably a couple of other things. But what wasn't included in that? Love. Feeling loved, which is a basic need of any human, to feel loved, to feel accepted, to feel connected. And I didn't feel that way. Neglect, left unattended for long periods of time. So as I said, my mom left in the middle of the night. My dad had to work nights. And there were just a lot of other things throughout the time as child welfare services was called on my parents multiple times. So, over a period of time of seeing those things, they saw that neglect was a huge factor in that as well. So we're going to dive deeper into that. So that was the cause of placement under the child welfare sense. But let's look more into abuse and neglect. And of course, I've had some time to really think about a lot of these things because I really didn't like my parents for a very long time. And then I took a step out of my situation and looked at the system view, the actual family unit view, the generational cycles, and multiple other things. And these are some of the things that I came across. So one, high stress environment due to many reasons. So high stress environment my family had because of, poverty. Why was there poverty? Because my mom, had a baby at a young age. Why did my mom have a baby at a young age? Because she was actually in a trauma situation and she ended up getting pregnant by that situation. And so from there, she ended up dropping out of school because of religious scrutiny and other things. And from there, it just kind of happened to be a domino effect on her end, and her trauma was never resolved. It was never addressed. It's just kind of like pick up and go and keep going and doing all the things. So that was my second bullet, right? Unresolved extreme childhood trauma from both parents. So on my dad's end as well, high stress environment due to many reasons. One of the reasons we couldn't stay with my grandparents was because my grandfather didn't agree with my dad's race. And when I'm referring to my dad, I'm talking about my stepdad, who I only acknowledge as my dad. And so why did that happen? Because he had a very negative interaction with what happened with my mother in her trauma experience. So it's deeper than that. And so with those two different experiences in itself, another experience that I'll add to high stress environment, which is the one directly across, lack of financial literacy skills. Lack of financial literacy skills can happen for many different reasons, including the history of colonization and, you know, just information not being in that community and not being passed down from generation to generation, and not knowing how to source the information. A history of emotional and physical abuse passed on as a hushed culture, wanting to escape from chronic PTSD and other unresolved mental challenges. I've had several conversations with my mother and my dad now, and you know, these are things that I've learned as far as the human aspect of them, what made them, you know, do the things that they did and create the experiences that they created. Zero support system and zero ability to trust others, which is an endless loop in itself. Because of, let's take my mom for example. My mom, you know, had a very extreme, unfortunate multiple situations happen, and that geared her to not be able to trust people, and therefore she doesn't have a support system. And so you have 5 kids, you know, you don't have any financial literacy skills, or very little, and you get married, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to love yourself, and you know, it's just a cocktail of crazy waiting to happen, honestly, at this point. And then, you know, adding on the systemic bias for resources. So, you know, my parents were interracial, and so my mom is Indigenous or Mexican, and my dad is of African American descent. And so, you know, there was a lot that I even remember growing up that they experienced and we all experienced as a family. And so there was a lot of bias around that. And I remember leading up to going into foster care, how hard my dad was trying to negotiate with the HR and just the welfare system in general. Like, hey, I need support, I need food stamps, I need these different things. And although those are, you know, great things as well, I believe that we needed even more support. I believe we needed, you know, some mental health services, some wraparound community support, some direction in, you know, financial literacy, also some individual therapy as well as family counseling. Okay, these are just some of the things that I think really would have been some solutions to a lot of the situations that we were going through as a family. So what are the effects of foster care on children? This is different sources. So this one's from the California Against Slavery Research and Education. Foster care is supposed to be a temporary solution whereby the child is adopted by a loving family or is reunited with the biological family once the situation is deemed safe. But the average child remains in foster care for 2 years, often being shuffled from one home to another. Some children are never reunified or adopted, and the effects are damaging. Foster children are more likely to become victims of sex trafficking. Given their need for love, protection, and their often impaired development of social boundaries, foster care children make easier targets for sex traffickers. According to California Against Slavery, or CAS, in 2012, studies estimate that between 50 to 80% of commercially sexually exploited children in California are or were formerly involved with the child welfare system. 58% of 72 sexually trafficked girls in Los Angeles County's Stars Court in 2012 were foster care kids. The most common age for children in the sex trade is 11 to 13 years for boys and 12 to 14 years for girls. And can you imagine the numbers now in 2021, from 2020 to 2021 with the pandemic? Whew. 2, foster children are more likely to become homeless, incarcerated, and or rely on government assistance. In 2012, 23,396 youth aged out of the U.S. foster care system without the emotional and financial support necessary to succeed. Nearly 40% had been homeless or couch surfed. Almost 60% of young men had been convicted of a crime. Only 48% were employed, and 75% of women and 33% of men received government benefits to meet basic needs. 17% of the females were pregnant. This is from the Jim Casey Youth AFCARS report. And 3, foster children attain lower levels of education. While one study shows 70% of all youth in foster care have the desire to attend college, nearly 25% of youth aging out did not have a high school diploma or GED, and a mere 6% had finished a 2 or 4-year degree after aging out of foster care. So let me share with you some of the effects of foster care on me. You know some of the statistics overall, and they have fluctuated significantly, mainly increased from 2020 to 2021, just from different organizations. And you can also check out thinkofus.org. They have some really great research that they've been doing throughout the pandemic around youth and families specifically. So some of the effects of foster care on me was feeling continuously discarded and abandoned. Thus, if I held on to that, I could grow up and have very low self-esteem, trust issues, anger issues, lack of intimacy, no desire for long-term connection with other human beings. Because what's the point, right? This is not necessarily something that is easily solved. However, mending a lot of the relationships that I had with my family and learning, what was going on with you during these times, really helped me to humanize my parents and to see that, they were going through so much. And unfortunately, that was their best. Because there was just a lot of things that they grew up knowing and learning and believing to be true that was actually very toxic and harmful for not only myself, but our entire family. So for me, I had to do a lot of work of unlearning and relearning and, really being able to look at the trauma and see, okay, this is not what's supposed to be going on. But I think about that too, what that could have looked like if instead of going into foster care, if there were other choices. We'll go into that a little bit later, but just putting that out there. Another thing, minimal physical connection to self, right? So if I'm always in my head and not balancing the mind-body connection to fully have the human experience, I'm just in my trauma. And that's what a lot of youth experience. A lot of people in general that experience trauma, it's survival mode in your head, like coaching yourself out of situations, in possible situations that don't even exist. And therefore creating a huge disconnect between yourself. And that's a lack of worthiness of your physical self, the lack of, I am human. Having this experience is more so back in your head about your trauma that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Feeling isolated from my biological family. I was being penalized with limited contact with siblings and continuously had to meet new people based on conditional care. So I felt very, very isolated from my biological family, and I really wanted to connect with them, but I really didn't understand how to. And, my biological family, they have their own things that they're going through. So it was just like, how does this work for it to be a healthy thing? And I also have learned that's what a lot of youth, especially youth that have experienced foster care and age out, it's like, I want to be back with my family, you know? But how do I do that? Like, how do we connect again? How do we heal this stuff? And I think that's what the focus should really be about. If there's a welfare system, it should be about that. And penalize with limited contact. So, you know, really creating a culture of not needing to contact my family, because after a while you can't contact them, so you figure it out by yourself or do other things. And then continuously meeting new people and having this sense of conditional care, right? So I was fortunate to know unconditional love through my grandmother when I was really, really young, right? Like, no, I remember exactly what that feels like and what that looks like. But a lot of people didn't have just at least that one person that could show them what unconditional love and care looks like and feels like. And so you can just get in an endless loop of conditional care, or like, oh, if this person does this one thing, they're getting blocked, right? So let's fast forward the technology or fast forward the terminology, and it's, if you say one more thing, I'm blocking this person. If you say this wrong thing, you know, what happened to, what is that called? Conflict resolution, you know, like actually, how do we address this issue, communicate our feelings, and all the other different layers that are important in relationships, in long-term relationships, not short-term conditional relationships. Some other effects: struggling to put the pieces together for historical identity and identity in relation to others. So this is a little bit deeper, but it's about, you know, on a grander scale and systemic level, my relation to my siblings, my relation to, so starting with my relation to my siblings, right, and my relation to my parents, I started to not feel like I was a big sister. I'm, you know, the oldest of those 5 siblings, and I just felt like, how am I going to say I'm an older sister when I can't even be there for them during the holidays, during their birthdays, when something is wrong, when something is going right, you know, celebrating with them, like the things that I dreamed to do when I was younger. I, you know, graduations, all the things, like, how could I call myself a big sister and be proud of that if I can't even be there for them, you know, and it, or talk with them about things that were important, like my little brother having his first crush and only learning about it like a year and a half later because we couldn't even contact each other. So many things like that. And so it was really about, what does that really look like for me? What is my identity in relation to my family now? Is it a big sister still? You know, if I'm a daughter to who? Like, I don't feel like I have a mother. I don't feel like I have a dad. You know, it's just a lot of stuff like that that emotionally and mentally you go through, and it's a lot of questions and, you know, wonders, like, why did this happen? Where am I now? All the things. So we're going to move forward on that. So these are also some of the effects of foster care on youth and families, not just specifically my family, but as I said, as I've talked to congressional members across the states and other youth, I've learned a lot of these crossing around each other. So one of the effects is having to adapt without communication to our biological family and getting used to it, right? I was talking about that a little bit earlier, creating a culture around not connecting. So, I mean, after a while, you like, okay, I can't call such and such, you know, you cry, you even, you know, get depressed or angry about it the first 10, 20, 30, 100 times, 200 times. And after a while, you realize this is kind of how it is. You know, do I want to continue to be in the cycle of depression and anger and all the things, or do I just get used to it? Family members are forced to create new identities out of survival mode and to create some kind of mental stability, a new sense of self without relation, right? Or with minimal relation, or I should say minimal significance to the relation. So for me, that was a badge of honor. Like, I'm a big sister. And I don't know if I still 100% feel that way, because all of my family are estranged, which is on the right here. We're really estranged now. A lot of what I guess my family used to feel and be a part of, even through the dysfunction and crazy and depression and all the things, even with my siblings, you know, it's just not, we don't have that strong connection that we used to have. And that's greatly to the environment of foster care, you know. I was often told that I needed to figure out a way to live without my siblings, you know, to think about life without them, because I needed to have my own family and get adopted. And I needed to figure out a way to be on my own and think about things as an only child. And I learned later that that was kind of because I was older, a lot older than my sibling. Well, not that much older. I was like 4 years older. And because of that, the goal was for me to get adopted by myself. And, you know, for a couple of siblings to get adopted by themselves and a couple other siblings to get adopted by themselves. So it was really kind of forced on us to not communicate, and it greatly affected us emotionally. Even talking to my siblings today, like, we talk about that, and it's still a very strong pain point, because it has changed significantly the way that we communicate, which is honestly barely at all at this time. You know, hoping for future differences, but at this time, not so much. So finding ways to cope from feeling something is missing and wanting to mend the wound, right? Knowing like there's something missing, pinpointing that it is family that's missing and wanting to mend the wound, but not knowing how to mend the wound. No longer seeing the importance of family connection and support, right? Always knowing like, okay, we can figure it out. We'll have, you know, other ways of having these solutions. We don't have to focus it on the family. Like, that just sounds deranged in general, right? So these are some of the effects. Physical ailments manifested from mental anguish. Okay, another insidious one, not so in your face. And this is an example here. So when I was in college, I was really sad because I really, really had a pull to want to be with my siblings. But this also gave a lot of my social workers and case managers, other folks, kind of the okay that, you know, my siblings and I should have even more minimal communication, because, hey, I'm away at college and I don't need to be distracted by what's going on with my siblings and just all these things, instead of, wouldn't it be exciting to be even more connected with, you know, for her siblings to see her, or for her to be in connection, so, you know, mentally she can continue to focus on her schoolwork. But no, I remember my sister, she was in a behavior facility and she was going through a lot. I remember her telling me that they gave her a lot of these new medications that she didn't want to take, and you know, she was voicing this to her therapist and other people and stuff, and they just kind of upped the dose. And she decided to physically fight back, and so they gave her a horse tranquilizer and isolated her for multiple days. Now, I'm not going to go into all of her story, but just those things, knowing those things in college, definitely gave me a lot of mental anguish as well as guilt. You know, why couldn't I do something as the big sister? So this kind of manifested itself into me eating a lot of junk food and comfort foods, right? So that created tonsillitis and a lot of other physical situations that landed me in the hospital. Luckily, I'm okay now. I have pretty good health. I'm, holistic wellness coach, all the things that led me to that path. But that's another insidious one that a lot of youth go through, is the mental anguish and inflicting that in some way on their body. Youth and families. Also, lastly, that I'll touch on is alienation. Okay, so these different variables: alienation, low self-esteem, unresolved family trauma. And that's really kind of like a cycle there of a lot of these effects that I've already shared. Familiar shadows. So this is a poem actually that I wrote last night, and I'm just gonna, it's very short, to the point, but it just kind of further emphasizes the relationship that I had with my siblings, and kind of where it's at now. My siblings and my family unit. Familiar shadows. Once a time, years ago, after the rain, before the morrow, I knew your face, and you knew mine. We were dancers of the sunshine. Cherished was our bond, your smile and dimes. But within a night, oh so cold, we heard a song with words untold, separated by worlds anew. My heart beating, quickening in pace. Where are you? We yelled and wept to no avail. Only two trees listened to me wail. As we grew old, the trees began to bloom. Perhaps now you are in the other room. A familiar smile no longer seen, just my wandering eyes reflected in my dreams. Familiar shadows hidden in the rain, as each drop pulsed my pain. Before the dancers were too excited for the morning dew. And now all I wish to know, with a tendered heart and unspoken words, is the answer to, where are you? Thank you. So going back to the beginning of our conversation to now, the question is, the Save the Child narrative really working? And don't get me wrong, given the same two choices, again, that I had in the beginning, yes, I would choose foster care over staying with my biological parents at that time. But why do those have to be the only two choices? What if we had more choices? And, there is no umbrella or cookie cutter approach for a solution to these various issues. Every situation is unique. However, there are some clear patterns and outliers. So I want to share with you, after you've learned a little bit about those effects and my story, 3 practical steps to prioritize family well-being. One would be to learn the history of foster care. All the way back to English poor laws, right? What was the motivation of foster care? And how does that motivation of foster care show up today? Is there a connection to the capitalistic structure of the overall economy? Meaning, is this for financial gain in some way? And, why? How do we shift this systemically and intergenerationally, right? In connection to the systems, as a worker, as a professional, as a person, as a human. How do we connect to these issues, and what are some solutions specifically that we can create in our own professions? Right? So learning the history will give you those answers very clearly. I believe that each and every one of us, have a purpose, and we also have various different life experiences and situations that lead us to specific solutions, and it's our call whether or not we actually do it, but nevertheless, we are still given those answers if we look hard enough to find them. Secondly, humanizing parents and caregivers, to see what is the need on a human level. We all make mistakes, and some mistakes are more horrible than others, honestly. But that is part of the human experience. And, you know, the hugest level of a problem can be clearly illustrated of, you know, what is the solution. So specifically with my situation, I recognize that there were multiple things after, you know, taking a moment to look at them on the human level. There are multiple things that could have been done, and even now still could be done, for my family to be connected again, you know. And at this point, because there is no government intervention, everyone would have to make those choices on their own. However, I think if the focus is more so on family well-being, then ultimately we do have a safe and healthy child, right? Because a child is part of that family system. Focus on family well-being, right? So focusing on family well-being not only supports the family, but also the child, who will also need their family support. You never age out of your family. That's what I learned going around and talking to people. Like, wow, that must be nice. You never age out of your family. You know, if foster care is saying you are, you know, we are your family now, we are your parents, we can do it better, but also we're kicking you out and you have to figure it out by 18. And I'm wondering, put it in the chat, when you're 18 years old, for those of you that do not have experience of foster care, when you were 18 years old, did you have to figure it out all on your own? And maybe some of you did, but I guess put a 1 in the chat if by 18 you had to figure it out all on your own and you had no need for your family anymore. Put a 2 in the chat if you did need some family and you know, still need some family no matter how old you are. Okay, the chat is blowing up with 2s. Yeah. Heck yeah. I mean, that's so important. So this is a beautiful quote from Robert Kiyosaki, and he says, "There is gold everywhere. Most people are not trained to see it." One of the things that we must do with child welfare is begin to train our minds to see the value of connecting and supporting the family unit, right? Not just the child alone, because if you just support the child alone in child welfare, at some point they're going to have to age out of that system, and they're still going to need supports, and they're still going to need their family. They're still going to want to be with their family 9 times out of 10. There's a few others that are like, you know what, I don't want to have nothing to do with them folks. But for the majority of, you know, young people, and even with them, I feel like if they were trained to see that as well, like how valuable the connection is and how important and how healthy it can be with certain supports, mental health and community wraparound and, you know, trauma healing, that can be so life-changing. Also, youth who enter and remain in the foster care system have a strong likelihood to have children who repeat the cycle, right? So there's a lot of youth, and many of you may perhaps have come across them, that their mothers and fathers, you know, were in foster care. And so that's the crazy part about it, is that if we choose to only focus on the child, then we might only be focusing on repeating a cycle, or worse, creating a new one that is not helpful. So my question to you is, will you be someone who supports the family in breaking toxic generational patterns? Or will you support the continuation of a toxic pattern, or even starting a new toxic pattern? And if you can put in the chat one thing that you will do after today to prioritize family well-being. So I gave you 3 practical steps, right? Learning some history. Let's go back to that slide right here. Some history, humanizing parents, and focusing on family well-being, right? What does that really look like? Reading some books on and talking to birth parents, attending more conferences, and, you know, beginning to focus and peel your mind back from saving the child, right? And let's support the family. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And from what I've seen in the chat here is, you know, we have a common dream, and that is to, one, revolutionize foster care, right? Support foster care's shift in the way it is viewed and the things that are done, the crazy things that are done. And to really have that focus in family well-being and ultimately supporting the child. And with that common dream, we just must put one step in front of the other to, you know, realize that dream. Just as so many other amazing people have before us. And honestly, it might not be as difficult as we're making it out to be. So thank you so much. I do want to share that I am happily married. I've actually done a lot of work in the back end of healing and connecting with others. And I have an amazing support system now. I did get out of foster care in a not so great way, but ended up working out. And I do believe that if a lot of these different modalities and supports were given to my family, that, you know, my family would be in a healthier place than it is today. And so I hope you've taken something from this. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Angela, wow. Today has been a day of all the feels. From our moment this morning, we had a session, and it's just been nothing about opening our eyes, opening our hearts, and realizing the potential of connecting with people. And so you just have been the icing on the cake today. And, you know, with the service providers that we have, you continue to drive home the importance of that family-centered approach, approaching their work from a trauma-informed lens, you know, how we can build out the protective factors and everything that we do. So just thank you. Thank you for, you know, being with us today, but also thank you for using your voice for others that are still experiencing things. And I know everybody's journey is so unique. But just sharing your vulnerability in your poem, just absolutely beautiful. And I look forward to being able to see that in print and being able to share that with others. So just thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, yes. Well, as we close out our 2 days of understanding and education, and you know, as you said, Angela, peeling back the layers of how we can do this work better, how we can meet the unique needs of every family through the programs and services that are available to wrap around families. Just want to thank all of our presenters over the last couple of days. our sponsors that have stepped up. Thank you to you. Your monetary support has allowed us to provide these fun giveaways, Angela's book, some other books. I want to thank our partner, DFACS, the community section, prevention and community support section, for being Prevent Child Abuse Georgia's partner. And then my team here at Prevent Child Abuse Georgia, Soli, Sophia, and of course, Jill. And then just one of our partners, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Dr. Boy, I don't know if you have anything that you would like to end the conference by saying, but again, thank you everyone for joining us over these last few days.
I would just like to say thank you to Angela for sharing your amazing story. I walked away inspired by what you were saying and your experience. Thank you for being so vulnerable with this. And thank you to our participants who have interacted with all of the speakers over the last 2 days. And thank you for sharing your feedback with us. We use these to continue to make our conference better each year. And I think we really are all walking away with things that we can do in Georgia to make our state healthier for children and families. So I appreciate everyone for joining us.
I think people are posting in the chat box some of their takeaways already, and I love to see in those. I want to just let you guys know that you should receive an email if you haven't at this exact moment that will have the conference evaluation. That link is for all of the sessions that you have attended today, and you just need to fill that one out once. And kind of end on a prize note, this is for the Lynn Davey coaching session about message framing and being solution oriented. And if the person is no longer on, that's okay. I will email them and every other prize winner, especially the people who now have Angela's resource guidebook. I will email you later today or tomorrow to get your shipping address and information. But again, thank you guys so much. And to our partners, we look forward to seeing you guys next year, hopefully in person. So have an amazing day. And thank you, Angela.